Matt Austin from Ping, Australia. Welcome to the Mile of Golf podcast. How are you, Matt?
Thanks, Roscoe. Thanks for having me. Yeah, going well so far, I must say.
Mate, it's great for you to be able to join me on the podcast. It's a special time for me in the podcast, and I guess you're the first guest of the Mile of Golf podcast that's being, I guess, brought to you with the support of an organisation that's very important to you in your world, but also very important to me. In Drummond Golf. So, thanks to Drummond Golf, thanks to Ping, thanks to you for joining us on the podcast. I just thought we might take, however long it takes to learn a little bit more about Matt Austin. I've known you for a number of years. I've probably known you for longer than I've been involved with Drummond Golf in the golf industry because, as one of these guys that hanging out at driving ranges and demo days, you are always a familiar face there presenting Ping product. You have been doing that for a long time. So I think it's going to be great for us to get to know you a little bit more, you to tell us about your role with Ping and a little bit about the background of how you come into this great role that you obviously very passionate about and the journey of Matt Austin, golfer, Ping extraordinaire guru. So let's wind it right back to the start. How did Matt Austin, get into the game of golf? Where did it all start? You're not just more than a Frankston boy here, mate.
Go easy on the Frankston, but yes, that's right. I am now in Frankston South, so I won't argue with that. My Ping journey started a long time ago. I got into golf like a lot of my friends did in that 1986 era when Norman led all four majors, and obviously only won one of them. But that was where the love of golf, I think, started. My dad hadn't played golf for about 20 years until that time, and he and I sort of started that journey again together, which was fantastic. From a Ping perspective, Paul Rosa, who runs American Golf here in Australia, is the distributor, looked after me with my first set of clubs when I was 11. So that's getting into, mid to late 80s. And I've used Ping golf clubs ever since. So that's 32 years. I've been involved with the company in that regard.
So let's just rewind that. So when you were 11, where did you grow up? Where was home originally?
Yeah, Mount Eliza. So
Mount Eliza.
Only a stone's throw really from where I am these days living.
Yeah.
Started my golf at Mornington Golf Club as an 8-year-old or thereabouts, and then gradually progressed to I was a member at Long Island from the age of 11. I think the old man lied on my age, actually. I think it was supposed to be 12, and I reckon he might have used a little bit of political license there.
You probably assumed that I knew that about your journey of starting at Mornington. Maybe I did know it, but I've forgotten about it because you know that Mornington Golf Club is a very, very special place to me. It's where I reconnected with the world of golf after, basically giving the game away as a junior. And Mornington was the place where I rejoined and rediscovered my love of golf. Mm. I didn't know that you were a Mornington boy. I knew you were down the peninsula. I didn't know that you were a Mount Eliza boy, as I am. So
yeah,
we should move in together. Hey, interesting. So how did the connection with Paul, obviously done a wonderful job representing Ping here in Australia with American Golf imports and supplies. How did that connection come about as an 11-year-old into Ping? How did that sort of happen?
It was really just a phone call. I think Ping was at its peak, I guess, in those days from an I2 perspective. My dad always had this dream of owning a set of Ping golf clubs. He went to Hawaii, I think, the year before, 2 years before maybe, and got himself a set. And then as I was getting into it, again, long story short, from a Drummond perspective, I think I went into maybe Drummond Frankston in those days, and we were looking, and Dad made a phone call to, in those days, American Golf. Paul answered the phone, did a fitting over the phone basically for what a tall, lanky 11-year-old kid could use. which in those days was black dot. Zing 2s, that was my first set, was Zings. Steel shaft, because that was pretty much all there was. And then it just progressed on from there, and I gradually worked my way through from Zing to Zing 2 to ISI and right through to now the new models.
That's amazing. You mentioned Zing, and, I'm just getting flashbacks of memories of my reintroduction to golf, and this is about you, not about me, but, that time when I came back to Mornington, I didn't have a set of clubs. They had unfortunately been stolen. So, like a lot of people that I come across here, getting back into the game, they go searching for some secondhand sets of clubs and so on and so forth. And I distinctly remember buying a set of Ping Zings online and getting my parents, who were driving down from the Hunter Valley, up where I originally came from, down to Mount Eliza to see me. I remember getting them to pick them up in Sydney on the way, because I thought, here's a set of Ping Zings. So when I came back to golf at Mornington, whenever that was, early 2000s, Ping Zings were my choice of weapon.
That was your set of choice, yeah.
And then I went to the i3s. So Ping for me has always had a very, very special place in my heart. Obviously now, I've played, me, I change golf clubs a fair bit.
Yeah.
I have to, because I want to. I need to be able to talk about and experience them all to do my job. But Ping's always had that special place, like that. But I go back to 87, in Palm Springs, in whatever the big golf chain stores are over there in the States at that time, buying my first ever Ping Answer putter. And I now have several Ping Answer putters and several other Ping putters in a pseudo collection. I don't have the original one anymore. Unfortunately, it got stolen with those clubs that I lost. But it just goes back, for me, that connection goes all the way back to that story. So Ping Zing, there you go. I had a Ping ISI, one iron.
Yeah. Yeah. So ISI is still to this day my favourite model. And again, it's when I was playing my best golf. So mid to late 90s, copper beryllium ISI set. I don't know where they ended up. I've still got the staff bags. I've still got the 11-inch Burton leather bag from those days. But the irons have gone, unfortunately. I don't know where.
ISI berylliums. So sought after now, those clubs.
Yeah, it's one of those things now that everyone has these moments where if you think back to the things you got rid of cheaply that are now worth a lot of money and people want, that was certainly one of them. Who was
your mentor down there at Mornington when you were that 11-year-old junior? Who was in charge down there?
To be honest, it was probably Laurie Quinlan. So back in that day, so Graham Quinlan was still a member there, Paul Wright, a lot of guys who were still around, Greg Christensen, playing golf. Laurie certainly probably took me under his wing. I didn't have a lot of lessons down there in those days. I can't even remember. I started with Croaks, with Peter Croker, who was at Pat River in those days. But it was probably Laurie who really encouraged me along and got me to join in the groups. I played junior pennant there as a 10-year-old. It was handicap pennant in those days, which used to be fun. But that was my real introduction to pennant golf in particular, which I loved.
Laurie Quinlan is one of those, members of a club that, I think every club loves to have. He was just, I remember playing a number of games of golf with Laurie. Very passionate man, very passionate Tigers man. I think he had the Tigers golf bag. Graham, I didn't know so well. Graham was, I remember Graham when I was sort of following along golf, as one of the elite Victorian golfers, supremely talented. I think he's floated between, Mornington and Peninsula Kingswood, won multiple club championships at both. So you would have spent a bit of time in and around Graham. Is that right? Yeah,
definitely. He was probably the year or 2 years older than me or thereabouts. Super talented, super intelligent. Didn't take his golf as seriously as he probably should have. He could have been anything, but he loved it and enjoyed it. Got to do it with his brother and his dad and his whole family. So it was an important part of Mornington Golf Club.
So then, when did you realise that golf was going to be a thing career-wise for you? What happened there?
That's a good question. So through my junior years, I progressed pretty well through the golf circles. When I got towards the end of high school, I had to make that decision. I was a pretty good basketballer as well. Dad was never a big basketball fan, very much an American sport. Aussie kids don't play basketball. So, look, I chose golf as a sport to pursue. different decisions, different times. I should have gone to college earlier when I finished high school at Padua College. I chose not to, chose to stay home and work my way through towards tour school. So it was probably when I was about 16, 17 that I really focused on golf.
And, playing tour school, how did the journey into professional golf, talk us through that?
Yeah, so it's a real roundabout one. I probably, again, made a decision. Back in those days, the PGA traineeship was almost frowned upon as an elite amateur. You're from elite amateur in those days. Again, Jeff Ogilvy and I are the same age, so you made the progression into the pro ranks, and then you played and you retired, and with lots of money. That was the plan. Yeah. I made a decision to delay that a little bit and went to the US and played some events, spent a little time at college. Missed tour school, unfortunately, the first year through injury. And then the next year when I was setting up, I actually got injured again as well. So I actually never got my way through all of an Aussie tour school, unfortunately, just through injury.
Yeah, right. And then, so was there that sort of sliding doors moment where it was like, well, I'm not going to do this professionally, but I still want to be involved in golf. So how did that then transition into this role now?
So from a playing perspective, I tell this story all the time. So one of my first events in the US was the Dogwood Invitational. So a fantastic event, played in Atlanta. Went over there playing reasonably well, striking the ball, as I usually did, pretty well. I pegged it up the first round, struck the ball okay. I think I shot 1 or 2 under, I can't remember. And this kind of short, fat Swedish bloke beat me by 10. And it was Carl Peterson. All right. Now, Carl Peterson, if you've ever seen him, looks like he's swinging his golf club in a phone booth. It's not attractive. He skanked it along the ground, putted the dots off it, and beat me by, I think he had 62 that first round. And that was my little epiphany moment of this is going to be a little bit harder than what I'd planned for it to be. And when I got home, I had I had this injury, unfortunately, through basketball. And I remember going to see the great Ramsey McMaster, and Ramsey tried to get me doing push-ups on a Swiss ball to rehab my shoulder. And I said, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And that was where I went back into fitting. I went back into doing a ping roll, basically.
Yeah, right. So Ramsey McMaster, what a fine Scotsman he was. I never got the opportunity to meet Ramsey, but, anyone that you've come across at that elite golf level, especially in Victoria, has been fettled by Ramsey in his world of what he did, and only ever spoke very, very highly of the great man that's not with us anymore. So ping fitting, how long have you been working for ping?
Yeah, so on and off. So that was I was 18 when I first started, when Lars Niera had the distributorship in Victoria back in those days, or the agency. And I started, I had my license basically, and he said, do you want to do some fitting days or demo days for me, as they were in those days? So I would load up the old van and drive that to where it needed to be, as well as when I was sort of working part-time at Long Island in those days. So it was kind of a little bit of extra cash before I went over to the US. Lars looked after me really well, and so did Paul through those days, obviously. I was kind of considered part of the tour department in those days, so my clubs would turn up with my name on them, and I could get lots of flashy things, so that was always attractive to me. And I kind of went back and forth with that a little bit, until the time I eventually went back in, tried to play, did my apprenticeship or my PGA traineeship at Long Island. Yep. Which was obviously, I was there for 7 or 8, maybe 10 years in the shop, either with Cameron or Richard. And then I had a moment where my second child was born, and I was working 7 days a week coaching in the shop, and I just needed a change. I needed to be home more and be around. So that was just on, I think, about 12 years ago now, where I went full-time back into this fitting role.
Yeah, right. Geez, I may even remember you from Lars days, because I definitely remember Lars. I remember coming across Lars because your ping van was the Mercedes. And, I used to see the ping van down at Mercedes-Benz in Brighton. And, any time that I was visiting there, because they were one of my dealers that I looked after when I was at Mercedes-Benz, I'd see the ping van and I'd have a little pep in my step. And I think I met Lars back then. He was a character.
Yes.
So let's talk about the role now then. you've just built yourself a wonderful studio down there in Moorabbin, which is coming along beautifully. It'd be great if we could get open again and use it.
Would be nice, yes.
It would be nice. But you do a fair bit of work along with your colleagues in places like Drummond Golf, out there at the driving range doing fitting days. What is the variety of work that you do, helping people understand and discover ping a little bit more?
Yeah, it's extremely fluid, and it has been forever. My role's probably changed 15 or 20 different times, different titles, different tasks that I carry out week in, week out. At the moment, we've actually had a little restructure where we've had Todd Hutchison join us from New South Wales, as he, along with Ollie Webb, will be doing a lot more out in the field. My focus will be fitting in the ping fitting studio in Moorabbin, as you mentioned. I'll still do some external fitting dates. I still go to interstate, South Australia, Tassie, up into New South Wales. When there's tour events in Australia, we'll definitely get to those events and help our staff players. And then occasionally, if I need to, I'll fly to the US or somewhere else if I'm required. So it's still it's more of just a fitting role these days, where it's been a few different things over the years.
If we can just sort of unpack that fly to the US, is that every ping player's dream to get a look behind the curtain at Ping HQ in Phoenix?
Yeah, exactly. So traditionally, yes, I would say most guys really look forward to those trips. I hate flying. One of the reasons I stopped playing was I don't like, not that I'm scared of it, I just don't like the travel time much. So unfortunately, if you're only flying to Phoenix for 3 or 4 days and then flying home, it's hard to get excited for that sometimes. But when you're there, it is fantastic to be able to go through the factory, spend some time, especially for me in VIP or the tour fitting department, work with tour players. My last trip was Phoenix Open, which is an event all in itself, with the big 16th hole and all those things. So it is a wonderful place to visit. I'm always there in summer. So I'm thinking Fahrenheit now, but it's 43 degrees every day in Phoenix in the middle of summer. It's not the nicest place to be, but it's still a really exciting place to visit, to get into the vault, to get onto the tour tee, spend time with tour players is exciting.
Now, hopefully we make this little Zoom video catch up into an actual video, and we can pop that on YouTube and that sort of thing. But, you talk about the vault there, and I think everyone who's, checked out ping at some level has seen the pictures of the vault. You're using it as your background just there now. Okay. So I remember, quite my previous world to, being in the Mercedes world. I remember, seeing a little bit behind the scenes. And I remember how I felt when I first saw, the Mercedes barn where they keep all these old cars that aren't even in the museum. I saw that open, and, there's a Pope-mobile in there, for example, and wow. Go and have a look, guys. I remember how that made me feel, because I was very passionate about that brand, and I dedicated, much like yourself, 12 years to my life before, deciding that I really am a golf person. Always was a golf person. Mm. What was it like for you going into the Ping Vault for the first time?
So the really exciting part for me is if the image doesn't really show it. So as you walk straight into the vault, the very back wall is where a lot of putters are housed that are, number one, quite old, and a lot of them aren't necessarily staff players. So you walk in there and you can see Sevi. So Sevi's got 2 rows or 2 shelves, as you see behind there, of gold putters. Some of them being obviously gold-plated and some of them being solid gold, as for majors. They're the ones that kind of excited you more. So Nicholas is alongside his as well. Tiger's a little on the side as you walk into the right there. I would spot out the Aussies, but it was more going through that nostalgic part of, especially, as I say, the Tom Watsons, the Normans, the Sevis, the Nicholas, the names you don't necessarily equate with ping, being ping putter users for the better part of 2 to 3 decades. That was the really exciting part. And you do get a few of those little moments of, this is really holding a piece of history.
Do you know who's got the most gold putters in the vault? Is there someone that stands out?
I'm pretty sure it's either Westy or Miguel from memory. The image behind me on my screen there are Westie's gold putters lined up, but it's probably about 6 or 7 years old. So he's added 3 or 4 in the last few years. But certainly it's one of those guys who's been one of our long-serving tour players.
So all of those putters behind you in that picture around the bag, right?
Leaning on the bag there, yeah.
I'd have to double check.
Putters. Yeah, I'd have to double check my history, but I'm pretty sure he'd certainly be up there.
I think there was a program that Radar Wayne Riley did, and he had a lot of the Ping staffers. Obviously, Ping was heavily involved and had the Ping staffers playing over there in the UK. And he did a great one with Westie. I love listening to Westie because he's just dry, he's funny, great sense of humour. You can have a laugh with him. He'll certainly have a laugh with you and at you if required. But he did mention there, I think he said he had the most putters out of anyone. But
I know it was mid-30s in those days. I think it was 34 or 35, so it might be close to 40 now.
So Ping, just talk about Ping for a sec. They seem to be a brand that does keep contracted players for a long time.
Yeah. So they build brand loyalty. So the big part of it, and again in Australia, it doesn't carry as much weight, but in the US and the UK to a certain degree, the Solheim name still means a lot when you talk about golf. So most of our players now have dealt with John Solheim, who's Karsten's older son, for 20 or 30 years, depending on how old they are. For some guys like a Westie, he was early teens when he started with Ping, and he's nearly 50. Not that he'll admit it, but it's getting close to it. So a lot of that just comes from loyalty to the family. A lot of our agreements have always been handshake agreements. There's not a lot of contracts that were signed back in the old days. It's changed a bit now, but John looked after players. There's lots of great stories of John looking after Bubba Watson when he was on the mini tours and trying to promote Bubba and look after him with some entry fees and those things, which John never took any payment back for. But since then, Bubba Watson's been a Ping player, and he doesn't go chasing money or look for anything extra. They're just loyal to the family.
Well, I think Bubba's come out now and said he's Ping for life, right?
Yeah,
I think he said he's somewhere along the line a while ago. He's Ping for life.
Only recently, exactly right. He did actually sign a contract, and there was a good story when Bubba won that first Masters. His contract renewal was actually up, and he could have asked for any sort of dollars. All he said was, "I want $1 more than Westwood. I want to be the highest paid Ping player on the roster." And that was all he asked for. He didn't ask for the millions that he was probably deserving and all the marketing that we did behind it. He just wanted to be that poster boy for Ping.
Look, I'm going to assume that it was part of that work that he does with Ping was one of the reasons why he was at the Solheim Cup. But I think generally it was very, very well received that Bubba took the time to go down there and support the USA women's team at the Solheim Cup. Unfortunately, it didn't go their way, as we know now. But for someone of his standing and station to be able to go down there and support those guys, I thought it was fantastic. Whether it's a marketing move or whether he just wanted to go down there, I'm going to, based on the way you just described Bubba, I'm going to assume that it was as much of his volition as it was that anyone else's. But it was a great move to see him down there with the women's golf. So important. How much value does the Solheim family place on things like the Solheim Cup? I just watched it on the weekend, as we all did. I thought it was fantastic. I loved watching, the women's game under pressure. That sort of match play format at a great course. Inverness, wonderful course. I went to the Solheim Cup in Glen Eagles in 2019 for a day. Yeah. One of my all-time great golf experiences. And how much does it mean to the Solheim family to be involved with that?
Yeah, I think. To John in particular, John, who's our CEO now, and Karsten's son, it means the world. So really it was Louise, so it was Karsten's wife who really promoted that event and said, well, why is there not a ladies event, the same as the Men's Ryder Cup? Karsten and Louise really put a lot of time and effort into marketing that. I don't know all the dollars and cents, but I know they do a lot of the marketing themselves, not necessarily any other sponsorship dollars or anything are involved with that. But they've always been a family to give back to golf. Golf's obviously been fantastic to the Solheim family, but In America, they have a huge junior foundation. The UK, they have a similar foundation as well, and they really work that grassroots all the way through. So I know John was definitely at the event all week. He was in a lot of photo ops, photo bombed a few. I saw a few selfies that he managed to jump his way into. And then obviously Bubba there as well. And Bubba is as genuine a person that you could ever meet. He'll admit himself he's shy and he's a little bit strange sometimes, but he definitely does all those things from the heart. The pink driver, all those things definitely is just Bubba to a T, definitely.
Have you had the occasion to spend any time in Bubba's company?
I've had a few times. One meeting was that last time when I was in Phoenix at the Phoenix Open. That was that period where he was using the pink Volvic golf ball. He was wearing pink shoes and everything. He walked into the tour truck and I just happened to be in there at that time. And he brought in, and I tell this story a lot because I've got a set of his clubs in the studio, but he brought in his lob wedge and he kind of handed it to us and said, right, I need this 3/4 of a degree flatter. It's kind of getting stuck in the rough a bit and closing down. You need to change it. And I looked at it and put it down. And because the grip's on sideways and it's a baseball bat, I just gave it back. I said, I'm not even touching it. I'm not even going to look at it. Spencer took it out of my hands, who's one of the tour guys, put it in the vise, gave it 2 little taps. Gave it back to Bubba. I don't know if he moved it at all, but Bubba liked it and Bubba walked out. So It was really just making sure that Bubba was happy. I looked at it and said, I'm not touching it. I don't even know how to measure that thing. But Spencer knew exactly how to handle that situation. And Bubba walked out. I think he played pretty well that week too.
It's an interesting point. And, I want to talk about, your role in ping fitting. I've got here's one I prepared earlier.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. It's the new
Beautiful.
I-59. So we're going to spend some time talking about that very soon.
Excellent.
Now, anyone that knows ping knows that they have, the ping fit system, the black dot, the different dot coloration system. Can you simply, for the people listening, explain how that works and how it came about? It's been around part of it for pretty much ever.
Yeah, so Carsten brought custom fitting to the market. So there wasn't any custom fitting in golf at all. He brought that to market in 1972, and that was with the first colour chart, as you mentioned. So the simplest way to explain it is rather than telling a golfer they had a set degree lie angle, he would equate a colour code to it. So it was much simpler for the golfer or the consumer to understand straight away. They were able to equate, I'm a black dot or a blue dot or a red dot, whatever the case may be. And fairly simply, he took height and wrist to floor, which established a starting point for colour code, because he understood straight away that Carsten wasn't a very tall man. And as soon as he gave his golf clubs to anyone who was taller, straight away they were too short. He realised he needed to make them longer. As you make a golf club longer, it affects the way it sits on the ground. Therefore, you needed to adjust the club to get the correct interaction with the turf. So that's kind of where it came about. So I tell this story again a lot. I'm 6'5", but I've got arms like Magilla Gorilla. Now that misses a lot of younger kids these days, that terminology, but I've got really, really long arms and I use standard length irons, even though I'm 6'5". Whereas Matt Kuchar, who's got little short arms like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, he uses 2¼ inches over at the same height as me and swings the club quite differently. So that's kind of where it came about for Carsten. And then that's been expanded over the years, obviously, and adjusted as it needed to be.
So then, when you think about all of the fittings that you've done, is there anyone that you couldn't fit? Is there anything that just didn't fit into the realm of, what we can build these days in golf clubs? Is there something that stands out?
Yeah, definitely. The super long ones are the challenges. So I've had a number of either NBA or NBL basketballers in particular who are upwards of 6'10", with proportionate arms. So meaning they've got arms that kind of match up to the rest of their body. And if we've got to go sort of 3 to 4 inches over standard length, we can build it, but obviously it weighs a ton. That becomes the big challenge. The shaft no longer works the way it should. They're the ones that are often you look at and just try and get as close as you can to get the golf club to work best for those guys.
Yeah.
Other challenges, really, the only other challenge will ever come from a golfer's expectations. So if they come in with an expectation that they're either going to hit the ball 30 yards further or straighter or higher or something, and it's just not achievable with either their golf swing or their build, then that's obviously a challenge sometimes as well, is trying to manage those things. But that's not uncommon.
Yeah, no, as you know, I don't know how many. I should try and work it out. How many club fittings that I've conducted here in, the 7 or 8 years been doing this. Has to be nearly 1,000. I don't know how many fittings if you keep a record, but I think that is certainly one thing that can, I guess, get in the way. Is maybe not the right term, but it's certainly a hard thing to overcome. When someone comes in and says, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, and I'm this, but because I get training from guys like you. I get training from everyone that's in your role.
Mm-hmm.
We all get trained on that, and being reasonably good golfers ourselves, you do learn how to fit, and you learn how the product works. You learn where this shaft bends and how its profile affects ball flight. But yeah, sometimes just getting past those little expectations that people come in. Predetermined. Make it a little bit harder. But there's all the beautiful thing about a lot of the golf clubs, but certainly your brand. There's so many opportunities to provide a perfectly fit set of clubs. Maybe perfection is maybe never achieved. I don't know.
Optimized is the term, right?
Optimized. Thank you.
Optimized.
Optimized. Yeah. But you've got so many options there to optimize, the best possible fit, to give the player the best possible opportunity to play their best golf. And I guess that's what we're looking for when we're doing, when someone's investing in a set of golf clubs. That's what you're trying to do, right?
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, we're looking for them to, and our catchphrase is play your best. We're looking to make sure that golfer can enjoy their golf to the best of their abilities. And we hope that equipment does help that. It doesn't fix everything, as we know. It doesn't cure all ills, but it definitely helps the golfer play better.
Let's not get too bogged down in the fitting, because this is more of a get to know you. But we should do that at some stage. We should maybe come down to the Ping studio and have a look down there, or maybe you come in here and we can go through a fitting here and maybe record that and give everyone that insight into what happens when you come into a place like Drummond Golf and you go through the My Match process, and then we end up using all of your Ping Fit gear. We've got this, pretty much this is exactly the same kit that you use in the Ping studio.
It is exactly right. I've just got a few more bits and pieces, but it's the same concept completely.
Yep. So we might do that one day. What else, Matt? Well, what else can you give us in the world of Matt Austin, Ping superstar?
Look, there's probably not much more to it these days. I'm enjoying, I don't say this a lot. COVID has not been terrible to me. I've been able to stay home and not travel for basically the last 2 years, which I'm not upset about hugely. So it's nice to be home. It's nice to have a base. Obviously, with the studio, as you mentioned, we've got $1 million facility there that we can take people through the simulators, through putter fittings. Us being American Golf, having Echo as a distributorship as well with footwear. We've got all of those things presented along with the bags, etc. So these days apparel. It's really, and apparel, yeah, of course.
Great.
These days it's really, from our perspective, is making sure that we've got fitting the right golfers for the right reason to the right golf club, making sure we're getting those performances that we're after. The nice part about a lot of the equipment now is adjustability. So having that ability to get any golfer in and being able to move a lot of things around on the golf club, change the shafts, etc., is a really nice way for us to do it, whereas there used to be a lot of guesswork involved. So I guess I enjoy that. I tell it to end up being a joke, actually. I hated physics at high school. I really hated it. Part of it was my teacher. Won't talk about her, but anyway, she didn't mean that I enjoyed physics, but I kind of now love TrackMan. I love to look at the data on TrackMan, understand exactly what the golf ball's doing, how it's working, what forces are causing it to do that. They're the things that I'm now being more interested in, because it can actually make a difference to how golfers can play.
Yeah, well, it takes the guesswork out, right? So if someone does think about, like we were talking about before, with a predisposed concept of what's right for them, the data doesn't lie.
That's it.
And we know that with data-driven fitting processes that you can show someone a set of metrics or a set of information that basically proves that the ball will go straighter, further, higher, or whatever the relevant characteristic that they need. We can actually show them that by using great technology and data. Much like this simulator that you see me standing in here.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think now, and this is the beauty of your environment now, is that golfers are much more comfortable being fit indoors. Again, my world now is fitting indoors more than outdoors because the data is so accurate, because the software and the feedback from the software is a lot clearer and a lot more user-friendly. More golfers are much more comfortable being fit indoors, and they should be, because the data is much easier to capture.
Now, talking about fitting, we should talk about some of the products that are that are currently on the market, the current lineup maybe, but a couple of the key products that you're just launching, because as I said, you're one of the first, Matt, in this Drummond Golf series. That's called the My Love of Golf podcasts that are supported by Drummond Golf. But I am being given the opportunity to make some video for Drummond Golf.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So we're going to jump across in a minute and do a little bit of a deep dive into the new i59. But talk to us about the current range. What's hot in the family at the moment.
So it kind of comes back in a full circle a little bit for us. So Karsten obviously started Ping as a putter company back in the 50s, so 1959, brought in the Answer putter, or the 1A, and then the Answer, and then that flowed through into irons, etc. The most sought after club, I think, at the moment is driver. Ping have been very popular from a driver perspective in producing a golf club that's extremely forgiving, as well as giving the golfer ball speed. So if we look at a tour perspective, last week at the Tour Championship, from time of recording now, we had the number one driver in play as well as the number one iron, which is exciting from our perspective. So G425 driver, the LS Tech at the Tour player in particular, the lower spinning heads, hugely popular. For the average golfer, we have that Max or the SF Tech, so we're able to straighten out ball flight as well. In the irons, we still predominantly, from a consumer perspective, probably fit a lot of G425. Again, what the engineers are able to do now is build a golf club that looks more palatable. So it doesn't look like a Ping did traditionally back in the Zing days we were talking about, but it performs a lot more like what they're used to. All right. So that's where we're starting to get improvements in overall performance. Sometimes it's distance. From a Ping perspective, that's not our be-all and end-all. We work more on consistency, strokes gained, distance to target, those sort of things, not necessarily just ball speed. And then we've just introduced, obviously, a new putter range in the 2021 putters, which are based on our PLD range, which a lot of our tour players use. And they've been really, really popular on tour as well as consumer as well. So that's been very exciting. And then the introduction of a couple of models we're going to talk about, obviously, in the i59, which is a better player's golf club aimed at the tour player or the better player, and a Glide Forge Pro Wedge, which initially have had some fantastic take-up on tour.
It's an exciting time. Ping, they are always evolving the product. Their technology and the focus that they put on technology is, I guess, tell me if I'm wrong, I always like to align to help people understand, a brand. And I very much always drew Ping back to my time at Mercedes-Benz, very much technology driven. They were very safety oriented. They put the customer at the heart of, their needs and built products for that. And I just definitely see some alignments to that type of way of thinking about the engineering and how it has to be the best technically in the Ping brand. And I don't know if that resonates with you, but
yeah, and engineering is obviously it. So we're a family of engineers. So John Karsten was an engineer. So going back in history again, Karsten designed the first rabbit ears for television when he worked at General Electric, and he designed the first jet propulsion engines for aircraft. So he was a fantastic engineer who was a terrible golfer, who made golf clubs that suited him better and started to make that down that path. And that still carries on. So we now have the family of engineers that still run the company. Ping is only a portion of Karsten manufacturing. So we still do engineering for other automotive industries and all sorts of different things. So we are involved in other factors. But engineering is where we level up basically with Mercedes. So we kind of do see that correlation as well.
Yeah, okay. All right. That's just me. That was mine. I've got other brands and other alignments for other luxury cars. I certainly have, and I can articulate those to those guys as well, given the opportunity.
Something that matches up with your Bugatti parked out the front there.
Yeah, exactly right. I don't actually have an alignment for a Nissan Navara. No, I don't. But certainly I can see. I was driving cars for a long time for a living, so I definitely see alignments to the Audis and the Lexuses and the other brands and so on and so forth. BMW very much so. But anyway, that's for another story. Matt, it's been great to catch up with you. I hope the listeners of the podcast enjoy getting to know you a little bit more. You are a very, very big figure in the Ping brand here in Australia. If you're in Victoria and you are a Ping person, you've probably met Matt along the way. This is for anyone else around the world that wants to know a little bit more about Matt Austin. His life in Ping very much has been a life.
Has been a life, yes.
As we've just articulated. And, it's been great to catch up, Matt. I look forward to chatting with you. Mate, I look forward to chatting with you more often in this capacity, and certainly looking forward to catching up with you about the I-59.
Awesome. Thanks, Ross.
No worries, mate. Thanks you.
Cheers.